I sent this blanket to my niece because she was going through a difficult time, and I was trying to support her, show her support, but also kind of channel my brother who had passed away sometime a few years before. And so I came across this blanket on Amazon and thought this is perfect for what she's going through. And it's from the perspective of coming from her father. So it says, "To my badass daughter, if fate whispers to you, you can't withstand the storm, whisper back, I am the storm. Wrap yourself up in this blanket and consider it a big hug. Love, Dad." Every one of us has moments that anchor us. The experience, the people, the places that steady us in some way, that remind us of who we are, that whisper to us, you are the storm. As you're finding greater meaning and purpose, it helps to know what keeps you standing, what keeps you grounded. So let me ask you, when life starts to fall apart, when the storms start coming, what keeps you going? What holds you together? Because your sacred anchors are the roots of your identity and the soil from which your core values, fortitude, and grit grows. Welcome back to the Good Life Lab with Dr. Dave, that's me. And this channel is all about exploring and experimenting with tools, tips, and techniques for enhancing your life. And we're in the midst of this 21-day series called I'm calling From Languishing Lost to a Good Gay Life. And it's all about trying to find a greater sense of meaning and purpose through positive psychology, research, through kind of sharing my own story, but also taking you through a process of developing a project, a good life project that can keep you motivated, keep you intrigued, interested, and moving forward with whatever goals you might have. So we've covered a lot of ground over the last several days. We're on the S in Compass, the first S, which stands for Sacred Anchors and Core Values. We're actually going to break up the first S, Sacred Anchors and Core Values, into 4 days. So we'll talk about sacred anchors first, then core values, and then we're going to go through an exercise I call the Remarkable Memento Mori 10-Year Good Life Quest. And I know it's a long title, I might need to come up with a shorter one, but I'll explain more about that when we get closer to those days. Well, let's get into a little bit of research like I usually do to support what I'm talking about. So when I think of sacred anchors and kind of moving from being caught up in a storm to I am the storm, I think of people who believed in me, who supported me through difficult times, who had no doubt that I would succeed, or at least believed in me enough to keep me motivated, to keep me going. I think of people who believed in me. I think of experiences that grounded me. I think of memories that stand out, that define who I am in some way. And even places that I feel more at home or connected to in some way. Those are a few areas where I find my grounding. And we're going to walk through each of those experiences, memories, people, places that might help you also find some grounding. So yeah, when I talk about sacred anchors, I'm talking about those experiences, those memories, people, places, and practices that help us stay steady when life gets chaotic. These anchors work because they tap into some deep psychological and biological mechanisms that support resilience, meaning, and emotional health. In fact, there are several well-studied pathways through which sacred anchors can support us, can strengthen us. Each one represents a different way that something in our life becomes grounding, a stabilizing anchor that we can return to again and again. So I'm going to go over just a few of these pathways that are science-backed that can help us find our sacred anchors. Here's what science tells us. Sacred anchors help us interpret our struggles and connect our pain to a bigger story. Through meaning making, finding meaning in difficult experiences strengthens resilience and supports healthier psychological integration. So that's all about meaning making and purpose. Another pathway supported by science we'll refer to as hope and optimism. So anchors often carry hope, a sense that something good, steady, and trustworthy is holding us. A strong sense of hope predicts better mental and physical health, including lower stress and improved long-term outcomes. Another area, another pathway supported by science to help us identify sacred anchors is social support and belonging. So many anchors are relational or communal, giving us the sense that we don't walk our path alone. Shared or communal anchor practices reduce loneliness and provide emotional protection during times of stress. And then another pathway, the last one I'll talk about, is more kind of from a neuroscientific perspective. Sacred anchors even show up in the brain. Grounding experiences literally shape our neural pathways. So reflecting on spiritual or meaningful memories, for example, activates regions tied to emotional regulation and well-being. So there's a lot of scientific support for sacred anchors and the importance of them in your life for finding stability and to support your mental health and well-being. Just a quick reminder that if you would like to connect some of these things that we're going through, these concepts, these practices with a greater community, I'm offering a wait list for queer men to help them support one another. It's a group coaching experience that I'm trying to launch and offer as part of this channel. So I'd love to have you join us if you can. Please check the description below for the waitlist link. I'd love to see you in the future as part of a virtual men's group to help kind of walk through these principles together. Let me share with you how this works on a personal level from my story. If you've been a part of this channel, listened to this channel, you know my Project 46. It's a project that I did for a year as I was turning 46, just to help me figure out a few things in life. And my life had collapsed pretty much at that point at 45. I was depressed. I had to move back in with my mom. I was coming out, and I was just frustrated with trying to date for the first time in my 40s. So, a lot was not going well for me. And that's just 15 years ago. It's crazy to think how far I've come. So there are a few things that I started to do to get me out of that dark time. And one thing I did was to set some intentions for the year. My first intention was to find love in life. So it meant a partner and community. The second intention for that year was to find greater peace with God and my faith. And the third intention was to find a job I liked. I was in between jobs, trying to get back into higher ed administration. Those became my kind of intentions, my mantras for the year. But they also became these sacred anchors for me. So connecting with people was one of a really strong anchor for me in my life. Connecting to something greater or transcendence was another anchor for me. The area of transcendence really transformed over that year for me from a traditional Christian conservative faith to one that really relied on connecting with nature in a greater way. So that was different than I expected. And the third grounding area for me was finding a greater purpose. It wasn't just about finding a job, it was finding purpose. So I found a number of anchor points during that year, some sacred anchors that I held on to that evolved during that year, but also sustained me since then. One of my strong anchor points during that time was my gratitude practice. I determined to, after reading some research around gratitude, to begin to just think about 3 things that went well each day, or what was going good in my life, not just the negative things, because it's so easy to be sidelined and held back by just thinking about all that could go wrong. So I started to think about what's going well in my life. And that shift, consistent over time, really shifted my mindset and I think my brain chemistry as well. So that was a good, strong anchor point, was gratitude. Another anchor point for me, as part of my transcendence intention, were awe walks. And so I just made sure every day, usually twice a day, I'd get out in the morning and the evening and just walk in nature. And that was became a very strong sacred anchor point for me. Another one, a good anchor point for me personally, is creativity. It's part of one of my strengths, and I love pouring myself into something, creating something new. Is where these projects come from that I do, these Good Life projects that really caters towards my strengths. And so that's something that grounds me, that helps me stay focused, and also to be able to look ahead. And probably one of the strongest anchor points for all of us, based on research, is connecting with other people. So finding your tribe, finding your allies, and investing in those friends over time. And those are just 4 examples of anchor points that you can maybe think about for yourself. But it's important to note that these anchor points aren't one-off dramatic actions that you do once or twice. These are consistent habits you develop over time. If you treat these anchors as practices, things you do consistently, they'll have lasting long-term benefits. So when you're faced with circumstances or experiences that whisper to you that you're not enough, that you're not going to make it, that you can't withstand the storm, you can eventually, over time, whisper back, I am the storm. That's the goal, to shift from being tossed about in a storm to becoming the storm. Your sacred anchors become the places you return to, the experiences, the memories, the people that remind you who you really are. And if you don't have that in your life right now, a community of people perhaps that can support you through your Good Life project or trying to transition to something better in your life, please consider joining the waitlist for our gay group coaching experience. I'm trying to launch this experience for people who are kind of in the same boat that I was or have been, and we're just trying to navigate through life and trying to find something better, more meaningful, and more purposeful. So if that's of interest to you, please check the waitlist link below, and I'd love to see you virtually in these groups. As we move into application, here's your practice for day 14, a practice designed to help you remember who you are in the midst of life's storms. Because we all forget. The winds pick up, life gets chaotic, and we start believing we're fragile, we're powerless, we're exposed. So what do you do when you feel like life is thrashing you around? Well, as part of a practice in the series around moving from languishing and lost to a good gay life, we're on day 14 of that series. And so I'm going to give you some practical application steps, things you can do to remind you of who you are in the midst of that storm and to move from feeling fragile to feeling like you can whisper back to the storm, I am the storm. There is strength in you, memory in you, history in you, anchors that hold you steady when everything else around you is shaking. So today we're going to uncover those anchors. First, as a way of identifying your sacred anchors, you're going to review the different aspects, the different parts of Compass that we've been working on. If you've been following along, you know the Compass acronym. C stands for clues and coordinating points. I want you to ask yourself this question to find your anchor point. What meaningful experiences, joys, pains, synchronicities have shaped your path? What are those clues, those coordinating points in your life that may be subtle but have spoken to you over time, that have guided you and can maybe be an anchor point for you? The second letter in Compass is O for origin story and heroic journey. And I want you to ask yourself this question: what early memories, relationships, or turning points feel like foundational chapters of who you are? So in the series, we did this exercise called Highs, Hurts, and Elixirs, and it had you go through and look at your life in terms of the highs, the hurts, and things that you learned from each segment of your life or each chapter of your life. So go back and look at those chapters and see what stands out to you as a potential anchor point. The third letter in the Compass series is M for what makes you come alive. So that's all about your passions and interests, those things that you're curious about in life. And for me, those curiosities have been my anchor points in many ways. I have come back to those things that just light me up and give me life. Those are anchor points for me. And then the fourth potential anchor point here is P for powers and personal strengths. One of my personal strengths is creativity, I've mentioned. And when I'm feeling a little bewildered or lost, oftentimes I can rely on my creativity to anchor me, to bring me out through those darker times. But what is that for you? What is that personal power or strength that guides you, that brings you back to center? A in Compass, again, stands for allies. So that's probably the most obvious here, the connections with other people. Those are phenomenal, fantastic, probably the most powerful anchor points. So find those people. If you don't have them, you can join our waitlist for Building Community if you want to help you kind of find your allies. And so that brings us up to where we are now, sacred anchors and core values. Hopefully these questions stimulate some thinking and help you identify what your sacred anchors are. The people, the places, the memories, experiences. What are those things in your life that bring you back to center and help you feel grounded and more stable? So out of all that I've been mentioning, I want you to think about just one anchor point that you can begin to recommit to in some way. Is it a gratitude practice that I mentioned? Is it investing in a friendship in a new way? Is it a place that you need to revisit to kind of bring you back to who you are? What are those things in your life? And find one that you can really recommit to over the long haul as part of this project, perhaps, to help you sustain your project over time. And the final point for today in terms of application, I want you to write down what that anchor point is. So write down, when life gets chaotic, I return to whatever that is, the person, the place, the practice of some kind, the memory, the experience. So when life gets chaotic, I return to this. So as we come to the end of today, day 14, we're going to move from sacred anchors to core values tomorrow, identifying those top 10 values that you can align your life with, which will help you become even more successful and happier as you pursue your Good Life project. Okay, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow on day 15.